Okay, good morning, friends. We're continuing in Mishna. We've completed Siman Kuf Mem Gimel, Hilchos Sefer Torah Shematza Batas, and listen to yesterday's share about the story that happened in our neighborhood, and the great saga of the Sefer Torah that they found a mistake in. Now, that's just to get you to listen to the share. Okay. Anyway, but it was an interesting story. Okay, Siman Kuf Mem Daled. Shaloi ledalig b'Torah me'inyan le'inyan v'dinei Hatorah. Not to skip in the Torah from one inyan to another, and the laws of the Hatorah. Medalgin b'Navi. Based on the Gemara in Megillah Daf Chav Daled, the Gemara in Yuma Samach Tes, you're allowed to skip in the Navi, but you're allowed to jump. Vein medalgin b'Torah. You can't jump in the Chumash, in the Torah. Mi Parsha zu Parsha acheres. V'hanimili b'shnei inyanim. That's two different topics. The Chashin Neshama tezbalbel das hashemim. It will confound and confuse the opinion. It will confuse the listeners. Avo b'chad inyana, but in one topic, for example, kagoin achrei mois va'ach be'asar shekoin gadol kor b'yom kippurim medalgin. If it's one topic, it's skipping from the avoid of Yom Kippur to the karbanos that the Kohen Gadol reads on Yom Kippur. It's all the same subject, medalgin. V'shala yikra al peh, provided you don't read it by heart. She'asu likroy shaloi min ha'ksav afil teva achas. You can't even read, not from the ksav, one word. Which we mentioned, that's the danger of if a Balkari is not prepared and he's looking in the Chumash and looking in the Sefer Torah. He's convincing himself he's looking in the Sefer Torah. But he may just actually be looking in the Chumash, memorizing the word, without actually looking back into the Sefer Torah. Anyway, you're now to read even one word by heart. In the Navi, you're allowed to skip even two things. Right? We do that on Yom Kippur by Mafter Yoina, where we read Yoina, and then we go to Mikel Kama Haicha. Where's that? Micha. Right? So we skip, and I think on Shabbos Shuva we do that in the Hatorah, where we go from Hoshea. I don't remember. I think we skip in that Hatorah as well. You can't delay. You can't have downtime where the tzibur has to remain silent. You better put your stickies or your stickets or your post-its or whatever they're called and get it. You need a smooth transition. V'hani mili b'navi yachad. And it also has to be in the same navi. Avo minavi lenavi, from one to another in medalgin. But we said that we skip from Yoina to Micha. In the Treyasar, you could skip from one Navi to another. But you can't jump mamish from the beginning to the end. That's too big of a jump. Okay. Says the Mishna Berura, Banavi. Hainu lefimashi yadua. That is, based on what is known, the Medina ein al haftar banavi psuka miyuchadim. It is known that according to the letter of the law, fundamentally, there are no designated psukim for the Haftarah. Rak shetzarach lios me'ein hasidra. It just has to be connected to the Parsha. So this week we say, Mei Noyach. Okay, Mei Noyach. We got a Noyach, So even though usually the Haftarah is more connected than just one phrase, but that's all that's needed. Kil kaman b'soif siman tav chavches b'haga. V'ashmeina de mutter lahamaftir b'anavi l'dag mi parsha zu l'parsha acheres. And it's teaching me a chiddush that it's mutter for the one being maftir in the navi to jump from one parsha to another. V'chein ha'minag b'kama haftaros shemaisifin lahem psukim mi parshas acheres. And that's the minhag in many Hatorahs, that we add psukim from other parshiyos. Bein medalgin b'Torah hainu b'sheni v'chamishi. That's on Monday and Thursday. The tzarch midina likroi rak asar psukim l'tasa gabre. On Monday and Thursday, where you have to read midin 10 psukim for 3 people. Oy b'yam tav tzarch likrois hey gabri ein likroisim l'chachila b'dilog. You shouldn't jump around. Rak haseder. it should be in order. Meaning in the Parsha of the week in Noach, what do you mean jump around? There's no jumping around. You got to read the whole Parsha. There's no possible application of don't jump around. You have to read the Parsha, and obviously it's going to be in order. But let's say on Monday and Thursday, all you need to do is read 10 psukim. So I might think, you read 4 psukim here, 5 psukim here, 7 psukim here. No, don't do that. You should read them in order. Why? Why can't you jump around? Shema tizbalbal, lefisha divrei Torah, divrei azharais. The words of Torah are warnings, va'anoshim, and punishments, u'mitzvahs, commandments. V'tzarch shehi kansu b'leiv hashayimim. They need to enter the heart of the listeners. U'chsha adam yoytzei mishita l'shita. And when a person goes from one line to the next, einoi noyach lehizbainain. It's not easy to contemplate. Ma she'ein kein b'neviim. As opposed to the prophets. It's easier to contemplate because it's not azharais and anoshim and mitzvahs. It's more narrative. Bereshis. Isn't Bereshis more like narrative? Light plug. Right? I guess you could ask, if this is the reason, if the reason is that divrei Torah are divrei azharais, anoshim, and mitzvahs, why can't you skip in Bereshis? So you say there's a mitzvah, there's puravu, okay, but I don't think there are any. Next week there's Mila, Vayera, there are no mitzvahs. It's all story. Unless we learn out Bikur Chaylim, we learn out Hachnasas Orchim. Okay. So, by the way, we learned something very important from here. That when the Baal Karei reads, you need to listen carefully. Because tzarech sheyikansu b'leiv Hashem. So you say, does that mean I'm not allowed to read Parsha sheets during Krias Hatorah? Yes, pal. That means you're not allowed to read Parsha sheets. Is anyone allowed to read Parsha sheets during Krias Hatorah? If your mother's Jewish, you can't read Parsha sheets during Krias Hatorah. If your mother's not Jewish, you could read Parsha sheets during Krias Hatorah. What about, I need to say Tehillim? Yeah, you need to say Tehillim that Hashem should give you siyata d'shmaya to listen to the Krias Hatorah and to have a little seichel that at the time of Krias Hatorah, it's not the time to say Tehillim. So should I say it during Chazor Sashatz? If you say it during Chazor Sashatz, you should say mimamakim, that God should save you from distorted priorities of saying Tehillim during Chazor Sashatz or during davening. I don't think I ever mentioned that before. Okay. Anyway, but I want to say Pitam Aktoiras. Very good. Say it after davening. Say it when everyone leaves. After you finish davening and you say Psukei Zimra with the tzibor and you say Shemona Esrei with the tzibor, when davening is over, you could take out your klaf and you could read it the rest of the day. Okay. Kagoin acharei mois va'ach ba'asar. Those are examples of skipping. B'chad inyana. In other words, chad inyana acharei mois ta'ach ba'asar, you could skip. Afal pi sheyesh hefsek rabbeinayan, even though there's a big gap in between shezeh b'parshas acharei mois v'zeh b'parshas emar. One is an acharei mois and one is an emar. Afil hachi kiven the tarvayu me inyan yom kippurim. Since they're both about the subject of Yom Kippur, mutar dalig v'kloisam yachad, you could skip and read them together. Fu adin ma shenoyagin b'tainis tzibor kishachorin vayechal b'parshas sisa shemedalgin l'psolacha v'heim gam kein mitam shehem inyan echad. The reason we could jump from vayechal to psolacha is also for the reason that it's one inyan. As long as you don't read Baal Peh. The reason they allowed you to jump and to roll to the second parsha, afdu min karmilsa, even though it's very recognizable, Baal Peh. So you don't come to read it Baal Peh v'zeh aser. In other words, the Mishnah Berura is koloi marrying the mechaber. The mechaber is not randomly warning us not to read it Baal Peh. It's explaining why we allow you to roll in the middle of the Krias Hatorah. Well, you know why you're allowed to roll in the middle of the Krias Hatorah? Because you're not allowed to read Baal Peh. But that's provided that Shala yisha badilag be'inyan sheyamdu ha-tzibur b'shtika. We say, Benavi medalgin b'shnei inyanim, as long as there's no downtime. Says Mishnah Berurah, Yisha b'zmaneim hayugim letargim bein pasuk l'pasuk. In those days, the minhag was to be metargim between one pasuk and another. Va'ashmeinan. By the way, the Teimanim still do that today, I believe. They still say the targum. I think their laning takes well over an hour. You know, their laning today takes well over an hour. The chiddush is that if you're going to skip in the Navi, the downtime cannot be longer than the amount of time it takes the Metorgaman to translate. It's not covered for the tzibur to remain waiting in silence and waiting.
Aren't they in silence anyway, listening?
Silence meaning, twiddling their thumbs, nothing to do.
They're listening to the Targum.
No, it can't be longer than that because it's not nice for them to, after the Targum is over. Yeah. The Kasua Paiskim, the Bizmanenu she'in regil metargim nami shari. What about nowadays? Are you allowed to be medalig minavi l'navi? There's no Targum. So if there's no Targum, you shouldn't be allowed to skip because people are waiting silently. Nami shari. Kivan shekol haftarah ksuvim zmanenu b'kunshus b'fnei atzman. Because nowadays, there is a Hatorah book. Oy b'chumashim. So then, if there's a Hatorah book or Chumashim, then you could just put in stickets, post-its. Nowadays, if you're laning the Haftarah from not from a cloth and there's no rolling, you could jump however you want because you put a tissue to the right place. And so then you'll say, then it should be mutter even in two Nevi'im? It is! Then it should be mutter even from Yeshua to Divrei Hayamim, it's mutter. Umitam zeh mutter bizmanenu, afilu kisha psukim he mishnei Nevi'im, va'afilu rechoikim zeh mizeh harbe. But, Lamaisa, that's if your shul is laning b'diavad from a Haftarah book. But l'chatchila, the Mishnah Berurah says later on in Reish Pei Daled, bevadai roi v'nochen shir l'chol tzibur Nevi'im, haksubim agabe klaf, sheba'oifen zeh gam hashemos nechtavim b'kedusha, ma she'en ken kishachnav al niyar hanitfas. And that was the minhag hagra. And many kilos do that. Obviously, if you can't afford it, and everyone has their paper esroi cases because they can't afford the silver ones, so I'm sure they probably can't afford the klaf. But if, let's say, everyone has these silver esrog cases that cost thousands of dollars, then obviously they could afford a klaf, and then they need to purchase a klaf for their shul. The Sharatzion says nowadays that many people spend many money on these silver crowns for a Sefer Torah. Then if they have to get a klaf, all these tachshitim are secondary to the klaf. The Aruch HaShulchan says you can't force the tzibur to buy a klaf. That's true. You can't force them to do anything, No, but the Mishnah Berurah says that if your shul has beautiful tachshitim, you better make sure that they have a klaf for the Sefer Torah. But there certainly is an advantage of not having a klaf. This way you could jump around to wherever you want.
If you have a klaf, why can't you have two Nevi'im that open side by side? You're not rolling, going from one to the other.
You mean have two Nevi'im and they're both marked?
No, it doesn't be marked. It's a cloth. It's sitting there. There's one here and one next to it.
And the other one, and it's open next to it?
Yeah, or just open it up and then you're up to it. Unless just that alone, closing one up, opening up the other.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of a procedure. But certainly in one Navi, you understand, you have to roll, and then that becomes an issue of Tercha D'Tzibura. Okay, we'll hold it over here. But even if a shul doesn't have a klaf, by the way, you could still love them. You should still love them. Just pointing out. Okay.
Recording stopped.